Hey, I'll see you in Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Davenport, Iowa, Las Vegas, Chicago, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. I've noticed a lot of similarities, not just what's happening in the United States, but what's happening across the pond in the UK as well. I think it's happened in France. So there's an open border here in the United States. Everyone pretty much acknowledges now. Not only is there an open border, but we've covered stories where the administration, Joe Biden's administration, is flying in plane full, full of illegal immigrants, and they call them undocumented. And then they will go to these cities and they'll give them credit cards for $1,000 a month to go live. Whereas we have homeless people under every bridge in every major city in this country, and they won't take care of them, but they can't wait to get the country flooded with immigrants. And a lot of people have a lot of different ideas on why that's happening, but it's definitely happening, and it's definitely a policy. And one for sure reason is to suppress the wages of workers. There's no doubt that's another reason in the United States is because people aren't joining the military anymore, and so they're promising them citizenship if they join the military. So that's too. That, by the way, that's the way Rome fell. But so is it similar? In the UK, is there's this flood of immigrants and people don't know why?
It's on a different scale and it's happening in a different way. I mean, the fact that you've got, the Darien Gap shortly won't be a gap anymore. They're building a bridge there to complete the connection from Southern America through to, the USA and the way in which all the NGOs and the United Nations and they're all set up to move people en masse from south to north. So clearly there's a deliberate policy of moving people every which way. What's happening in the United Kingdom is that we've got the English Channel that had always been celebrated as a kind of a castle moat that kept out Napoleon and it kept out Hitler and everybody else, and now it's just a free for all, and the little boats come every day when the weather's good and they're picked up by the Royal National Lifeboat Institution and by Border Patrol and they're brought into the southern ports, and then they're distributed out into the wider terrain, and they're given help and they're given money and they're given accommodation and they're put up in hotels and so on and so on. So it's analogous. It's not exactly the same, and also, I mean, it's the population of Britain has been more altered, I think, in the last 20 years demographically than is comparable with any other country on earth. It's a massive demographic change has happened. The altering of Britain demographically is not paralleled, I don't think, anywhere else. Pound for pound, it's a smaller country with a smaller population, obviously, than the United States of America. Why that's happening? Because, I mean, if there was any intention to stop that flow of people, you would stop it tomorrow. You just stop it. It would be easily done because that waterway has been being patrolled by the Navy and by others, for generations, for hundreds of years, and suddenly it's a free for all. Suddenly it's impossible. So clearly, the reason that the small boats and the mass migration is happening is because it's supposed to happen. It's not being stopped because no one wants to stop it, or no one with their hands on the levers of power want to stop it. And you've got these farcical things like Rishi Sunak announcing that he's going to fly the odd plane to Rwanda and move people at enormous cost per person to be relocated to Rwanda and all of the rest of it. And no one really thinks for a minute that any of that's actually going to happen. But again, and then you've got to say to yourself, these people that are on the move are also coming from places elsewhere in the world that have been so messed up by the likes of us, by the West, by these policies of the West, of NATO and the rest, destabilizing, bombing the bejesus out of these places until they're rendered into rubble. And then obviously people are on the move. And so there's a lot of anger targeted towards the incomers. And you think, well, fair enough, because people are worried about their communities being utterly changed. They're worried about, the arrival of different heritage, different culture, different religion. You can understand the tensions that ensue. But the people that are arriving are pawns as well. They've had their reality messed up as well. and they're on the move. So, and you know, the message that you kind of want to get out there, or the thing you want to get out, is everyone should link elbows left and right with everyone that's standing either side of them, because the problem's above us. It's them up there, that centralising force that's taking the piss out of us, and you know, and punching down on us and everyone, black, white, and brown, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and all of the rest of it. We should all just be setting aside our, you know, the internecine squabbles for 5 minutes and realising where the real trouble is, and it's because we're being messed with, one and all.
Yeah,
and, and rather than fighting with one another.
Go ahead.
No, that's you know, that I mean, it's the extent. That's another aspect of the way in which we're being messed with and played with. Group is being set against group, creed is being set against creed. You know, color is being set against color. You know, we've got all of that going on in Britain at the moment. You think, well, wait a minute. Yes, there are tensions, and yes, there are all sorts of problems that ensue when you mix, you know, people that don't really want to be together, and there's a pretense at integration which is never going to happen. Yes, these are all absolute problems that are massive in people's lives, but you've got to pull back a bit and go, but who's doing this? Why is it suddenly the case that we can't man a border? Why can we suddenly not control the comings and goings of people into the country, which was done effectively for hundreds of years, and now all of a sudden they say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. They're coming, and they're here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, the policies of just here in the Western Hemisphere, how we sanction and overthrow democracies. We do that in the Middle East. We did it in Iraq, displaced 1 million people. Look what we did to Libya. We turned it, when the most successful country in Africa, turned it into a failed state with open slave markets and people fleeing there. So that is, again, and what NATO's doing throughout throughout Africa and the Middle East. We're just, and look, with 20 years in Afghanistan, look what we did to Syria. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And so again, it's not to demonize the immigrants, but it's to demonize the people who are creating the conditions that create this. And it's like they want chaos. And I've always said, go ahead.
The problem you've got, there's a brilliant book by Eric Hoffer called True Believer. I'm sure you're aware of it, read it, and the ways in which populations are destabilized over and over again. It's a playbook, and it works a treat. And one of the things that happens is that people are encouraged to think that everything that they hold dear is actually suboptimal, to put it mildly. That their national identity is questionable, that their history is shameful. They bring it closer to home and suggest that the things that your parents believe are contemptible. They deracinate people. They cut people away from their roots. People become anywheres. They're persuaded that they don't belong anywhere, and therefore they could be moved anywhere. And this is done by every mass movement, every ideology, fascism, communism, Nazism. They all do the same things. They make people feel worthless. They make them feel as if they come from somewhere worthless. We've got this fiasco at the moment where the Conservative Party, as part of its electioneering for the coming general election, is promising the return of national service. Right? It's promising that kids will go into either working voluntary in the community or going into the army or going into the military. Now, they're pushing national service at a time after a generational attempt to discourage kids from Britain of being proud of Britain at all. The kids have been being told for a generation at least that Britain's history is only shameful, imperialist, colonial, and all of the rest of it. And so you say, serve which nation exactly? Because you've been telling these kids that are coming of age now, that their nation is shameful, and that there are so many things that they should be ashamed of individually and collectively. And you look at what's happening to our veterans. I'm sure it's the same in the States. We've got veterans living on the streets, homeless, disregarded, post-traumatic stress disorder, and all of the rest of it. That's how they treat the full-time professional military in this country. And they're saying to kids, wouldn't it be great if you gave a year of your life to serving the military and be proud of your flag? We've got a situation at the moment where if you were to fly the Union Jack from a flagpole in your back garden, you're eminently likely to get a knock on your door, and it would be a policeman saying that the neighbours had reported you for a hate crime. by flying the national flag, and then on parallel tracks they're saying, national service, serve your country. Which country? Whose country? I thought I was supposed to be ashamed of the place. And now you want my kids to go and give 12 months of their life and possibly serve what? And is that just the on-ramp to conscription? Are you just going to eventually find a reason to push them towards the meat grinder in Ukraine or similar? There's no joined up thinking to it at all. And the extent to which these people seem to think that all of us are too blind to see it is frankly insulting.
You come see me on tour in Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Las Vegas, Davenport, Iowa, Chicago, Illinois. We're doing a live panel video show, special surprise guests on that show, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and make sure you go to Jimmy Dore because they don't want to buy it from a second reseller.